Start this. Today we're going to go over Matthew 23 through 24, and then we have a question at the end. We're going to talk more specifically about enduring to the end. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much that your word is always true. And it is a journey of faith to continue to read it, study it, and think about it and learn and grow. And I just pray for all of us to be open to hear what you have to teach us, study things out for ourselves, and ask questions because that's important. It helps us to look for the answers. We just praise and thank you for this time together. In Christ's name, amen. Okay, and the study tool that I'd like to focus on today and think about, for everyone to think about, is how just because we listen to a teacher, including myself, teachers, churches, groups, they can pull things out of context. We can have traditional verses that we use for certain things, and we never really look at the context. So context is important, and to prove these things, whether it's for salvation or whether it's something like enduring to the end. I know religiously what people say about that and say about a lot of things in these chapters. And so what we want to do is look at it freshly and come to our own conclusions based on what the word teaches and not what anyone says. So that takes time and energy. I know a lot of you do study, and those of you who don't, I encourage you to start. And if you need help, I'm always available. That's what I do as a Christian life coach with women. So let's start here in thinking about the three groups of people in any time, whether it's in the dispensation of grace or whether it's in the time in the Gospels, in Israel. There's three groups of people: unbelievers, believers who are faithful and studying and living it, and then believers who really aren't living it. Those are the three groups. And what the book of Matthew does is it addresses these three groups in different ways. And so we'll talk about that as we go through chapter 23 and 24. Let's start in 23. And basically 23 is exposing the religious system and religious people in Israel for what they are, warning. That's the context. In general, it seems like it's talking about unbelievers. And so it's sectioned out into three main sections as I see it. In the first section is 1 through 12. And in this section, it's God's word versus behavior. They're not consistent in these unbelievers. They have a religious system, the Pharisees and Sadducees, and they act like they are very true believers, but it's an act. And we'll find as we study Matthew that Satan is their father, and that's what Jesus says to them. But this is a good chapter to really see where they are and what their thinking is. Okay, verse 1. We're not going to read every verse because chapter 24 is a bit complicated. We're going to focus more on that in our question at the end. So let's just read a few verses. Verse 1 and 2 gives us context. It says, "Then spake Jesus to the multitude and to his disciples, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. They're in a position of authority, religious authority. However, what we will see through this section, 1 through 12, is they don't have a godly attitude. And he's exposing them for who they are. It's just a facade. They're really following Satan's works and fleshly works. Verse 3, all therefore, whosoever they bid, you observe, that observe and do. But do not after their works, for they say and do not. So that's basically an overview of the Pharisees. They say what you're to do, but they don't do it themselves. And we can jump over to let me just see, verse 5, and get the motive. It says, and all their works they do for to be seen of men. And it goes on listing, 3 different ways they do it to be seen of men. They make broad their phylacteries and enlarge the borders of their garments. They love the uppermost rooms, that they sit in the prestigious spots at the feasts, and in the chief seats in the synagogue. And they also get called rabbi or master, which the Lord Jesus rebukes that, because only God is the master. So in verse 10 it says that neither be called masters, for one is your master, even Christ. And so he really reveals that he's the Christ there very clearly. And that's really the significance of this section. It's really addressing what the motive of the Pharisees and Sadducees really are, and what he's looking for and warning because the disciples are listening to this teaching, is they need to understand doing things for men is not the way to do it. Doing things unto the Lord, even in Israel's program, it was the same. And we can be very religious people, even as believers, and do it so people will look at us and exalt us. And as a teacher, some people might put me on a pedestal. That makes me cringe. I don't like that, because I'm just like you and we're the same. And I'm giving you some insights that God gave me. So anything I say, it's just insights God's taught me. I ought not be exalted. So people who look at me, I try to encourage them to prove things, and don't exalt what I have to say on the same level as other teachers or even God's word. It's the word that's what we're to focus on and exalt. So it's what he wants the disciples to learn is verse 11. It says, but he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. So what the Pharisees and Sadducees are trying to do is to be seen of men and to be first and to be exalted. But Jesus is saying just the opposite. He's saying those that are greatest aren't sitting in those seats. It's those that are humble, a humble servant. And that's why Jesus came as a servant, even washing the disciples' feet. Verse 12, and whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. And we will see that's part of the rewards that'll happen. Those, if they're unbelievers, and I believe most of these Pharisees and Sadducees are unbelievers, but if you're a believer and you're just not living it and you're doing things for men, it's just, in Israel's program, they don't get rewarded for that. And so some of them don't end up getting to live in the temple, in the kingdom, on that heavenly Jerusalem coming down. So the next section we see is 13 through about, let me see, 31. And it's the 8 woes. 8 woes to the Pharisees and the ungodly. And they're all important. We're not going to read all of them, but we will read some strategic ones. In verse 13, so it's 13 through about 30, I guess, is really what it is. Verse 13, but woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. And now he's going to tell you why he says they're hypocrites. For ye shut up the kingdom of heaven against men, for ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer ye them that are entering to go in. They're really getting people to believe some things, but they don't really show them the way. They're not even getting in. They don't know the way. And so it says that in, let's see, verse 14, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye devour widows' houses. They take money. They take all the widows that are very poor without a husband. There was no way to make money. And they would take that money gladly for a pretense, make long prayer so that they would give them more money. And therefore ye receive the greater damnation. See, and that's a key too to this issue of recompense. People who are more and more evil get a more and more recompense or damnation. It's a term that can use being damned to hell, but it also can be used to its condemnation. And they'll have a greater condemnation, those that do the most vile things, just like those that do the most godly things and are the most of God's servants will get a greater reward. There's a graduation of reward, and it's sometimes hard to see in the verses, but this is a good one in verse 14 where it says a greater damnation. Think on that. What does that mean? It means that there's levels. One gets less, one gets more. Okay, so let's just skip down here, verse 16. Woe unto you, ye blind guides, which say, whosoever shall swear by the temple, it is nothing, but whosoever shall swear by the gold of the temple, he is a debtor. Now, some of these with the swearing, it's hard to understand what this is talking about, but it's just showing that their heart is not right. Swearing by the temple or gold, or they list a number of different things. And the gift that's on the temple, what's the difference? Well, some things were given as a work by men, and some things were God's temple, God's work and God's things. And so swearing by man's work, like the gift that's placed on the temple, it just shows their attitude isn't really exalting God in this process. The focus is on their efforts, human efforts, instead of what God freely gives. So let's keep reading. Verse 25, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye make clean the outside of the cup and of the platter, but within are full of extortion and excess. It's a typology. The outside of their vessels, they have all these robes and they look just pristine, and they're up in the upper chambers and they're walking through the streets looking probably the best of anyone around. They've got all these holy garments on, and yet inside of them, they have the wrong heart attitude. It's vile. It's self-exaltation is what it is. Verse 26, thou blind Pharisee, cleanse first that which is within the cup and platter, that the outside of them may be clean also. Just having a facade of a clean outside doesn't mean anything. It's really what's inside that matters. And he says, another woe, 27, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye are like unto whited sepulchres. That's like a coffin, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but within are full of dead man's bones and of all uncleanness. Basically, it's a typology of where they are. Dead bones. There's nothing in there worth of anything. And that's why I believe, one of the reasons I believe they're just unbelievers he's talking about. And so it's in verse 28, he says, even so ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men. Of course, God knows truly, but within ye are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. And so that's just a sample really of this section, but they are 8 woes. And if you're not sure what they are, go back and study that out. In this next section, 31 through 39, it's really the sad lamentation of God, in my view. That's how I see this section. And it's very sad that these are his people. He wants all men to be saved in any time period, including this time in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John on his earthly ministry. And he's very sad. Verse 31, wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourselves. So your works show who you are, that ye are the children of them which killed the prophets of old time, in the past, all of Israel's history. Fill ye up then the measure of your fathers, ye serpents, ye generation of vipers. How can ye escape the damnation of hell? And that's another good verse that would tell me that they're unbelievers, that their end, only those that are not believers end in the damnation of hell. And so let's just read a little bit more about this last lamentation of God. Let me just pick it up here. Verse 36, verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. All the things that the prophets that were ungodly will come in this generation. And this phrase, this generation, will come up again in chapter 24. And it's, let me just see where it is. Verse 24, 34. It says something similar. It says, verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all things be fulfilled. And that's a hard saying because it didn't come to pass yet. And that generation, the way we normally think about a generation, it didn't happen then. Jesus died, things changed, Paul came, God set Israel aside. And so, well, what is this talking about? It's a particular time period. This generation was stopped in the middle. The generation which was the kingdom was coming in, that was stopped abruptly at the stoning of Stephen when God raised up Paul, and when he got saved. So it will be fulfilled when we're raptured out of here. And Hebrews to Revelation then continues Israel's program. It's like it starts up again right where it left off. And so that generation continues until, because remember, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, and that kingdom of heaven was put on hold. And so that generation where the kingdom of heaven is at hand will go on, and it will come to pass. And that's what I see what that's talking about. I just wanted to explain that here in verse 23, 36. But the greatest lamentation, I think, one of the greatest in the Bible that God makes is verse 37. It says, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often," this tells you God's heart, "how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not." They refused their Messiah here. Another verse that's also very sad about Jerusalem is back here in Romans. Let me just see where it is. I think it's Romans 11. I'll read that. Romans 10:21. It says, "But to Israel he saith, all day long I have stretched forth my hands to a disobedient and gainsaying people." That's also a lamentation that God so wanted his nation to the outcome to be different, but it wasn't, and he allows free will. And so, behold, verse 38, we're back in 23:38. "Behold, your house is left unto you desolate." the house of Israel left desolate. For I say unto you, ye shall not see me henceforth till ye shall say, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. And that is when he comes back in his second coming in Revelation. And so that's where we'll end this. And it's really a sad context here of unbelievers in Israel and God's lamentation for them. So let's transition right into 24 and read the first 3 verses here, because this section here is talking about Christ's return. And so now we switch from the focus of unbelievers and him leaving Israel and saying, okay, I'm going to set them aside. And my focus is now on my return. I'm going to teach the disciples about that return. And so it says here in verse 1, it says, and Jesus went out and departed from the temple. So as soon as he said, your house is left desolate at the end of the last chapter, he went out and departs from the temple. It's a signal saying something is changed. And his disciples came unto him to show him the buildings of the temple. And so they were focused on the physical. And what Christ is doing is refocusing them on what's really important. And Jesus says unto them, see not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. They were really exalting how beautiful the buildings in the temple were. He said, these are going to be destroyed. They're nothing. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us when these things shall be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world. Those are the questions, and this chapter provides some answers. It's difficult to understand. You really have to know a lot about Daniel, and we're not going to go back to Daniel. It's a bit too complicated to get into. It would be another half hour of time to go there. So I encourage you to go back to Daniel, maybe Daniel 9, and look at some of the prophecies there. But in this section, verses 1 through 14 is this first section. It's really a general review of the end is coming and is upon them. And so we'll see what Jesus says, the very beginning here. He says in verse 4, and Jesus answered and said unto them, take heed that no man deceive you. It's going to be a great time of deception, before the second coming of Christ in this tribulation period. This is Satan's main last stand, if you want to say it that way. He is taking over. He's going to go in the temple and he's going to act like he is God, and it's going to be a grievous time. He's going to change a lot of things, and he's going to try to deceive the believers of the time. And that's why he focuses on enduring to the end. He's talking in this chapter to believers, not unbelievers. So believers don't lose their salvation. They lose rewards maybe when they do go and they're in the kingdom, or if they are still alive and they're believers, they something else, they'll get other things. But certain things will be taken away from them. They won't have that better resurrection that Hebrews talks about. So they're to take heed not to be deceived. Verse 5, and many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. Satan is going to really deceive many by what he does. He's going to do miracles. He's going to bring people back to life. It's going to be very difficult without them understanding and being believers for them to have the Spirit teaching them what's true and what isn't true. They have to be very careful and stay focused to endure. Verse 6, and ye shall hear wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So there's going to be many wars and rumors of wars. After we're raptured out of here, this is happening. We will not see any of this. We'll be gone. First Thessalonians chapter 5 says we were not given, we weren't made for wrath. Ours is a grace period. And so we're taken out of here, and then he continues this generation of prophecy. And so they're to expect problems and wars and rumors of wars. For nation shall rise against nation, the kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, pestilence, and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrow. So that describing a time period in the tribulation, the beginning of sorrows. So you can map this out if you would like, in your own time, to see what these sections are. And so in 9 it says, then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my sake. This is the little flock, the believers, the remnant. They're all kind of referring to the same thing. They're believers, and they're going to be killed. They're going to be tortured. They're going to be afflicted, and everything's going to be difficult. You have to take the mark of the beast if you want to buy and sell. And if you take the mark of the beast, that's a signal that you're going to the lake of fire. You're on Satan's side. So only unbelievers take that mark of the beast. Believers know better not to take it. They don't, and they have no food, no way to buy and sell. And so that's why we see a little later that God instructs those that are left, that aren't killed, will flee to the mountains, and he'll take care of them there. But they're going to expect to be afflicted and killed. And so what he says then, let's see, verse 10, and then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And this can be believers that are not built up, and they're not going to endure to the end. There's going to be many unbelievers that are going to pull them aside. But I think it's talking about believers. They're going to be offended by things. They're going to want God to take this away. But he's telling them it's going to happen. Prepare yourself. And you're going to need to stand fast and to the end. And verse 11, and many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. They'll just be tired. They'll fall away. They'll shy away. They'll be scared. Many will be scared. Their faith won't be strong enough to stay focused. Verse 13, and he's telling them that's going to happen. So don't be among those people, you believers. And here in 13, he says, but he that it shall endure until the end, the same shall be saved. Saved from the power of darkness, saved, not salvation from going to the lake of fire, but saved from the problems. They'll be able to stay focused and not get pulled aside. Those that endure and stay focused. That's the context in here, believers. And the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. That's another section, the end. So the other one was the beginning of sorrows in 8, and here is the end shall come. And now he goes ahead and he goes then. So that's he's gonna talk about. The end is going to be described now. So we want to remember, it's certain verses like to endure to the end has always been used for people. If you don't endure, you'll lose your salvation. That is not what the context is. And I encourage it, that's my firm conviction from all the places where these verses are used, that you might think that. Look at the context a little bit more and meditate on it and pray about it. And I'm sure eventually you'll come to see it. Okay. So, verse 15. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, that's in chapter 9 of Daniel, stand in the holy place. Whoso read, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee to the mountains. So that abomination of desolations is part of this end. That's another section that he's talking about, this part of this end that's going to happen. They're going to need to flee to the mountains because there's no hope where they are to do anything. They just need to get out of there, those that are still left. Let them which is on the housetop come down, not come down to take anything out of their house. Nothing is worth anything. And they need to just stay focused on going to the mountains, because if they delay, they will be killed. It says, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. Go with what you have. God will provide, like he did with Israel. It was a type way back in the wilderness when they were wandering 40 years. God made it so their clothes didn't get old, their shoes didn't get old. He provided food for them. That was a typology of what's going to happen in this great tribulation period. Verse 19, and woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then, so that this is next now, then shall be great tribulation, such as not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. This is the great tribulation happening now. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. All the elect would have been killed if God didn't cut it short. And so he did. There was a certain things that he wanted to accomplish. And once they were accomplished, he cut it short. Excuse me. Verse 23, then if any man shall say unto you, lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. So many people will be coming through this time period saying they're Christ, but there's only one thing they should be looking for. And what Jesus does is he tells them how to locate it. For there shall arise false Christs, false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders. That's not what they should be looking for. Insomuch that if it were possible, they would deceive the very elect. If they look for signs, they're going to be deceived at this time, because Satan has power to do signs and wonders at this time. Verse 25, behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chamber, believe it not. For now he's going to tell you what it will be like. For as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. That's what they should be looking for. For wheresoever the carcass is, there shall be eagles be gathered together. Anywhere the unbelievers are, the birds are going to have a free meal. They will be devoured. That's not where believers, what's going to happen with believers. Verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days. So these are continuation of things that are going to happen. It's kind of like a newspaper. It's listing all the news that's going to happen ahead of time for them. So they'll be able to look back at these verses and say, oh, this is it. This is what's happening. It says, the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, verse 29. The moon shall not give her light. The stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall shake. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn. They shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. So that's what they should be looking for. All the rest would be deception. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of the trumpet, and they shall gather together the elect from the four winds and from the one end of heaven to the other. Now, he goes on here in 32 down to 35, and it's giving us some ideas, not us, it's giving Israel some ideas, but us too, as we're reading it, some things that Israel's going to have to pay attention. Now, learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know summer is nigh. It's reading the signs. When the branch is tender and brings forth leaves, you know that summer's there and the harvest is soon. The figs will start growing and they'll be able to harvest it. They know by certain things the way the fig tree looked. And that was the same thing about this great tribulation period. They should be able to see these signs Jesus is giving them and see the time and where they are in the time. Verse 34, verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things shall be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. They will come to fruition, just not in our dispensation of grace. Let me just see. So now this last section, 36 through 51, this is a big section, really, and there's a lot of controversy in it. This first part is about the verse 40. Then shall two be in the field, and one shall be taken, and the other left. This is not talking about the rapture. This is at a different time. This is going to happen in the tribulation period. If you look at the context, you'd see that. It's not talking about our time period was held a mystery. It wasn't even known about. This is not talking about that, and none of the dispensation of grace was ever prophesied about. Now, that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing is that let's just read this a little bit, and we're going to see some specific detail that would tell you it's not the same. Let me just read verse 36. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my God, my Father only. But excuse me. But as the days of Noah were, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage until the day Noah entered the ark. Then what happened? Well, the people didn't know about the flood coming. They didn't see it. They didn't plan. They were unbelievers. Only believers were saved in that boat, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall the coming of the Son of Man be. They were unbelievers that were taken away, not believers. They weren't taken away. The believers were left. That's what this is talking about. As you go on, verse 40, then shall two be in the field, one unbeliever shall be taken, and the other will be left, just like the days of Noah. Two women shall be grinding at the mill, one shall be taken in wrath, and the other shall be left. And there's another account of this, I forget which one of the Gospels, but it talks about what it says there in 28. And wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered. The eagles are a type of judgment against unbelievers, and they'll take those people away. They're going to be gone. It talks about that in another place. But so as far as that, that is absolutely not the rapture. In the rapture, believers are taken out of this world. And the reason that is because the rest that are left are going to go through the tribulation period. And we have been, you know, spared that. We're not a part of that. So this last section, I know I'm going long, but it's hard to explain this in a quick minute. Verse 42 through 51. This last section is really telling people that you need to prepare. Believers, you need to prepare for things. Watch, verse 42, watch therefore, for ye know not what the hour your Lord doth come. But know this, that if the good man of the house had known in which hour the thief would come, he would have watched and would have suffered the house not to be broken up, and the thief wouldn't have gotten anything. So he's trying to encourage him to watch. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man cometh. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household, to give them meat in due season. That's part of that reward system for believers. They will be given rulership, kind of like the parable of the talents. Those that don't deal with the talents, one guy buried his one talent, the others did something with it. If you don't do anything with it and you just live the worldly life, you're not going to have these rewards. But here it says he made him ruler of the household if he was faithful. Verse 46, blessed is that servant whom the Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. And then he talks about the evil servant next. Those that I believe they're evil servants. That means they are servants of God, but they're ungodly believers. It says the evil servant, verse 48. But and if that evil servant shall say in his heart, my Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour when he is not aware, and he shall be cut asunder, and appoint him his portion. His portion would be that he doesn't get a place in that kingdom. He'll be put out with the Gentile nations, and he won't partake in that. That's a special blessing for people who are faithful. And he'll go out in his portion with the hypocrites. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. They will be grieved that they don't get up their portion in the kingdom. But it will be according, it's recompensing for what they do. If they don't live godly, they don't get rewarded the same. Same in our program. Actually, they're very similar. Today in the dispensation of grace, 1 Corinthians 3 talks about rewards, and it's according to works. Some things will be burned away, will suffer loss, but those things that do last the fire were rewarded for. So it's very similar program. It's not the same, it's similar. Because they have an earthly kingdom. Ours is heavenly, up in heaven. So I think I'll finish 24 there. I'm sorry it took so long. And I'm just going to go over a few things about the topic of enduring to the end. And let's read that verse again. It's in 24. I'm looking. Verse 13. It says, but he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. In the context, he's talking to believers, Look up in verse 3. And as Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately. So it was a private discussion to his disciples, believers. And this is in verse 4. And Jesus answered and said unto them, the context, that's clear of the context for that verse. But you'll have to look at other verses. I'm just going to talk about this particular what we've been talking about. And let me see. 42, let's see. 42 through 51 is really teaching that the enduring. It's really teaching the believers to watch, to endure. How is it that they're going to endure to the end? God always provides an instruction and then tells you how to do it, whether it's in Israel's program or in ours. And that's what he's doing here in this section that we read over. Go back and look at that. That tells them how that they will endure to the end, that they're saved from being pulled aside by the ungodly and the difficulties and be discouraged and scared. He's saying, don't focus on certain things, focus on this. And so if they do that, they'll be able to endure. Okay. Let me just catch up here. Let's go back and really look at the different rewards. Even in the Old Testament, it was prophesied in Psalms. So let's go to Psalms. Psalms chapter, I think we're just going to go to 1:15. There's many more as you read through Psalms, and I encourage you to do it in all the Bible. In verse 1, 15:1, it says, Lord, here's another question. Who shall abide in thy tabernacle? Who shall dwell in thy holy hill? That's the holy hill of Jerusalem. And he's prophesying here. It's talking about this tribulation time when that new Jerusalem comes on earth. Who shall abide? Who's going to live there? That's the question. And that's the ultimate reward in Israel's program, being in the kingdom. That's what they've always wanted. Their heart desire is. And it tells you, he that walketh uprightly and worketh righteousness and speaketh the truth in his heart. He that backbiteth not with his tongue, nor doth evil to his neighbor, nor taketh up a reproach against his neighbor, in whose eyes a vile person is condemned, but he honoreth them that fear the Lord. He that sweareth to his own hurt and changeth not. He that putteth not out his money for usury, nor taketh reward against the innocent. He that doeth these things shall never be moved out of the kingdom. But not all believers do this. This is for some of the believers that do these things. It's part of their heart and who they are to do this. And there's many, many other things. I'll just list some other places in Psalms 17:15, if you want to write them down, or look at the tape. I'm taping it, and it's on my YouTube channel. 24:3, 31:19, and 69, 35 through 36. It all addresses this, and there's many, many places that it has this. But we see that all these things are accounted for those who endure to the end and have this kind of attitude. Let me just see. There is a verse in Daniel 12, 1 through 3, I wanted to go over. Daniel 12. This is at the very end of Daniel, and he has just prophesied a whole lot of things. Daniel was totally overwhelmed when he didn't understand a lot of these things that he was prophesying about and the visions. In verse 1, it says, "And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to the same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they shall turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever." This is what they were hoping and looking for. So as the New Jerusalem comes down, we see in chapter 21 through 24, even the nations will partake in this. It's not just Israel. All the nations who are faithful will be a part of this. And we can see that. Let's see. Let's go to one more verse in chapter 21 of Revelation. There's many verses again through the Bible. 21, what did I say? 24? Yeah. This is in 21:1 is when the heavenly Jerusalem comes down and is on earth, and Jesus and God are going to be in the temple. They're the temple of it. They're going to be in Jerusalem. And it says here, this is a part of that process. "And the nations of them which are saved," so they're saved nations, Gentiles, "shall walk in the light of it. And the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor into it." They're able to come into the kingdom. "And the gates of it shall not be shut at all by day, and there shall be no night there. And they shall bring the glory and honor of the nations into it. And there shall in no wise enter in anything that defileth, neither worketh abomination or maketh lie, but they which are written in the Lamb's book of life." So there's Gentiles too that will be saved, and all of them are encouraged in this dispensation to endure to the end to receive certain rewards. Okay, I'll stop there. I'm sorry I went so long.